It's never easy to get up in front of everyone here and admit, oh, I made a mistake. But sometimes you got to do what you got to do. A few months ago, I made a video very, very critical about the Alexander technique. If you haven't watched that video, which has about a 60% like to dislike ratio, which is pretty low even for this channel. I tend to do more controversial topics surrounding especially classical singing and classical vocal pedagogy. And my interest here is consumer reporting. So I advocate for consumers, and most of the audience is providers of services. They don't like being criticized, and so they don't tend to really like my videos. Still, that's a pretty low like to dislike ratio. And it made me think a bit, and it made me go back and look at maybe I made some mistakes. And I also got a lot of criticism in the comments section. And I thought it would be helpful to look at the 3 most popular arguments that I came across in the comments section. And then at the end of this video, I will explain what I think was my mistake and why I made that mistake. Before you watch the rest of this video, if you haven't seen that video, you can click on the link in the video description down there, and you can watch that, and then you can get an idea of what the backstory is here. You can also like this video if you liked it. If you didn't like it, do nothing. Just forget I said anything here. And if you would like to see more of these videos, please subscribe to the channel and then ring the little bell so you can get notified when I publish a new video. And if you'd want to, you can also send me donations if you appreciate this content and you'd like to see more examples of me admitting that I was wrong. Then a good way to do that is to send me money so I can have better equipment and do a better job of presenting. So for instance, it would be great for me to upgrade my camera equipment so that I could show you my whole body while I discuss things like, I don't know, posture and how to move and what to do with your feet when you sing and all that stuff. So if you think you'd like to do that, just follow the links that will be in the video description and send me some cash. You can also, by the way, purchase a t-shirt that has the new school singing motto on it. That motto is "Show Me." And I came up with this t-shirt as a way for you to let people know that there's a new movement going on in classical singing, and maybe in singing in general. And that this new movement is all about being in the room with someone who is doing exactly what it is you would like to be able to do.
Yeah. I heard that you're settled down as low, high, like across your entire range. Falsetto, when you break into your other voice, like that. That's changing between them. Blend, which I call the actual motion of going, oh. It's like when you see on the shows, Voice or Idol or things like that, where people don't know that they can't sing.
Not some version.
Remember yesterday, walking hand in hand, lovely.
That's totally different with a whole bunch of excuses for why.
If you're going right away to go, remember yesterday. Now that's not falsetto though, right?
But that one way or another, if you're going to be efficiently learning how to do something new, you need to have someone in the room who can actually do it. Doesn't need to be the teacher necessarily, but it's got to be someone in the room who's showing you exactly how it goes. Now on to the 3 big arguments. These were found in the comments section of that same video I did on the Alexander technique. Just to give a small backstory, I was trained extensively in the Alexander technique while a young artist at the Metropolitan Opera. They have a training program for young singers. I did that program for 3 years. And as part of that program, for the first 2 years, I had free Alexander technique lessons. And after that second year, the head of the program told me Alexander technique is not effective, so we're cutting it from the program. And I didn't like that. And so I went out on my own and continued with my Alexander technique training. I was trained by someone named Lori Schiff, and I had only good experiences working with Lori Schiff. I have warm personal feelings for Lori Schiff, but I have these questions and criticisms about Alexander technique based on 20 years of experience. Not just my own experience, and not just my own problems, but my own successes. I feel like I am now much happier with the way I use my body on the stage and the connection between my body and my voice and my ability to move. Making that progress meant trying out some new ideas, and it meant figuring out whether or not the ideas I had before were worth keeping. At some point, I decided these ideas from Alexander technique are holding me back, and I need something better. That is how I became a critic of the Alexander technique. So, a few months ago, I put out a call on social media. I said, is anyone willing to defend the Alexander technique? I'm looking for a good person, not someone who we can't call an expert. I'm looking for someone really good who's going to give me a spirited and a good, strong defense of Alexander technique, and who will subject my arguments to some real pressure to see if what I'm saying is legitimate, to see if it's the truth or if I missed something. So I was contacted by someone named Ariel Weiss.
Why do so many people insist they know where our shoulders belong? And by the way, your shoulders don't belong back or down.
Ariel Weiss is the Alexander technique teacher for the Curtis Institute of Music. You can't get better than this, except for maybe being the Alexander technique teacher at Juilliard and the Metropolitan Opera. So she's maybe like one little rank below the person who trained me in Alexander technique. I didn't contact Lori Schiff about this because honestly, I have too many personal feelings about Lori Schiff. She's a really good person, I think, and she was a friend while I was at the Metropolitan Opera. She helped give me some breathing room and emotional support, because being someone like me with this neurological difference from other people, from shall we say typical neurotypical people, it was a little bit difficult for me. And she put up with my weird habits that are very typical for someone who has what we call attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And in that sense, I owe her a lot. But I have a higher loyalty to the truth. That matters more to me than my personal relationships. At the same time, I don't think it's a good idea to deliberately make a debate more emotional than it needs to be. So I reached out looking for a stranger, but someone who would be kind of comparably good at pressuring my arguments. So I found Ariel Weiss after she found me actually and contacted me, and said, yes, I'm willing to debate this with you. Oh, I thought, great. And so I sent her a list of my criticisms of Alexander technique. And she abruptly cut off all contact. And I was left wondering what to do until I found a TED talk that she gave. So she was invited by the TED organization, which I'm sure you've heard of. If not, just use your search function there. And she gave a talk on Alexander technique that I think was as good as you can get for a talk about Alexander technique. And you can see in the comments that her colleagues agree with her. So I thought this should be very representative. And this would be a fine thing to use as the basis for my arguments. If you watch the video, you will know exactly what my arguments were, but in this video, I'm going to be talking about the three most popular rebuttals that showed up in my comments section. And at this point, I'm also going to stop and say, if you're one of the people who made these rebuttals, these comments in my comments section, I don't take it personally. Well, in some cases I do, but if you made one of these first two arguments, let's say, I don't take it personally, and you are invited to come here on my channel and have a discussion with me. I won't edit what you have to say, except maybe to take out pauses or, anything that might make you look awkward or something like that. I can edit that out and just keep the good parts where you're making your point as well as possible. You're still invited, Mr. or Miss Alexander technique teacher, to come and sit down with me and really discuss this like adults. But if not, I guess I can just keep talking about it this way. So I'd like to start off with the first argument. Number one, there are as many Alexander techniques as there are Alexander technique teachers. This is an interesting one. It's what I would call like a trick argument. If we wanted to give it a name, it's called the double standard. The double standard is when you state a standard for evidence. In this case, the standard is, if you wanted to say something about Alexander technique as a whole, you would actually have to go and look at every single Alexander technique teacher, because there are as many techniques as there are teachers.
It all started in the early 1890s when Australian actor Frederick Matthias Alexander developed vocal problems that led to hoarseness on stage and threatened his career. Doctors and vocal coaches were of no help, so Alexander, in a stroke of genius, sought to examine himself with mirrors to study what he was doing to cause his problems.
Even if I go and I find another TED Talk by a different Alexander technique teacher, and even if I can see that this guy has the same problems Ariel has, his feet are turned out to the side, probably excessive foot pronation. He's flat on his feet, in other words. His hips are really sagging, so his pelvis is just kind of sagging forward. His arms are kind of dangling at his side. His upper back is curved in what's called kyphosis. And his head is, well, of course, forward and up like it's supposed to be in Alexander technique, which we could call nerd neck or text neck, which is the very thing he's warning us about, text neck. He seems completely unaware that he's demonstrating all the stuff that we think of as, bad posture. He seems unaware that he's not moving well. He's stiff, and he's basically standing like a sad teenager. That kind of cuts into his ability to project with his voice And it also just gives him this weak appearance that's just not good for public speaking. I'm going to give you a quick tip. If you need to give a talk, wear a shoe with a heel. He's trying to be a good boy here, I think, and he's wearing flat shoes, probably because he was told, avoid a heel rise, it's cheating or something like that. When you need to get up in front of people, use a shoe with a heel. I'm not sure that that would really save him here. But the reason I want to show you this is that if you go from one Alexander Technique teacher to another and you get them to do TED Talks, as far as I can tell, this is how it always turns out. They simply aren't prepared for the event. And they aren't prepared for the event because they don't actually train. Training means you subject yourself to stress. And you're careful about what kind of stress and how much. When you recover from the stress, you come back stronger than you were before. If you keep doing that over and over again, and you got your timing right, so that you're not going back to baseline before you add the next training stress, you're going to get stronger, you're going to get more coordinated, you're going to move better, you're going to breathe better, and all of that stuff. If, on the other hand, you don't train, if your idea of educating your body or of developing your movement is what's called somatic education, which is what Alexander Technique is. And if your theory is that you need to relieve stress in order to get good balance and posture, by definition, you aren't actually training your balance or your coordination or your posture. You're just applying a kind of therapy. And we see these results time after time. If the Alexander teacher looks like this, what do you think half an hour a week of Alexander Technique is really doing for you? And more importantly, is this enough yet? Do we need to look at every single one of them, or can we see a pattern by looking at a sample of Alexander Technique teachers? Another version of this argument is that the method is only as good as the practitioner. In other words, it's up to the practitioner to make this work, not up to the method. This argument is expedient in the sense that, it could get someone off your case, possibly. I guess that's what they imagine, is that, this means I can forget about any criticism that was made about Alexander Technique as long as somebody else was teaching it, because mine is completely different. Does this also apply when someone is saying something good about Alexander Technique? So if we went to the same person who is saying there are as many Alexander Techniques as there are Alexander Technique teachers, would they react the same way to something in support of Alexander Technique? Let's say, for instance, I don't know, let's say I publish a study that says Alexander Technique is as good as taking an aspirin as far as pain relief for people who are sitting at a desk for long periods of time doing office work. Would that then apply to my local Alexander Technique teacher? When Alexander Technique teachers talk to other people, are they applying this same standard whenever something good is being said about Alexander Technique? I don't think I really need to spend a lot of time answering this question for you. What I would like you to do is just go and interact with some Alexander Technique teachers, and you will have your answer to this question. It does lead us to the second point. The second point is that if Ariel Weiss was invited to do a TED Talk, and if we have a web page being cited called alexandertechniquescience.com that is supposed to be full of studies showing the benefits of Alexander technique and the research basis for Alexander technique. Who am I to say, who is Mr. Opera to say that there's no evidence for this, that there's no scientific evidence? Well, luckily enough, the TED organization has my back, and they have your back. You see, they have a standard as well. They have guidelines, and those guidelines say you can't get up and give a TED Talk in front of our TED logo claiming something is science if there's no scientific evidence for it. That's against their guidelines. And you may be asking then, well, so why did they publish this talk? Well, they did, but as they said in the video description, it was a mistake. Someone put Ariel Weiss in there. Someone very motivated put Ariel Weiss in a TED Talk, even though, according to the TED organization, there is no scientific evidence at this time to support the claims made in the talk. None. That includes all of the research, quote unquote. There's no science there. Just because you did a study doesn't mean you did science. There's rules you play by to do science and to do scientific research. The Alexander technique research that's out there, even if it did apply to every Alexander technique teacher, which it doesn't according to Alexander technique teachers, if we buy their argument that every Alexander technique teacher is different, even if we accept their double standard, the TED organization, having read these studies and looked for evidence that supports the claims of Ariel Weiss and of Alexander technique proponents in general, they didn't find any science. It's not there. Now that leads us to the third argument, and the one I take personally. And let me explain why I take this one personally. The third argument is that nobody should listen to Mr. Opera, and in some cases, Mr. Opera should be ejected or banned from our group and excluded from our discussion because Mr. Opera engages in ad hominem attacks to try to make his point. I'm a critic of Alexander technique, and what I have done, instead of debating the points, is that I personally attacked Ariel Weiss for being unsteady on her feet, for gaslighting herself in front of the audience by claiming that she fixed her balance problems with Alexander technique when she clearly has major balance problems. That I engaged in a personal attack when I dug up examples of her giving an Alexander technique lesson to a guy whose job is to dig holes, among other things, look like some kind of city worker or something, some contractor. And his job was to dig a hole with a shovel, and Ariel was coaching him on how to do that. And I pointed out that she was ignoring all the principles of force production, and she was sort of ignoring his needs completely as a guy who needs to dig a hole. And instead telling him, he needs to do these standard Alexander techniqueisms, keep your head forward and up and be, use as little effort as possible or whatever. None of which is going to help you dig a hole in the ground.
So here you go. You go up, off your feet this way, because why would you want to press down into your feet? Your feet are going to hurt at the end of the day. You go up this way, and then you're going to have to balance on one leg to lift the other, right, to put that thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, and now can you balance on your right leg and pick up your left? Yeah. All right. And then? Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, it is hard on your body to dig holes with a shovel. It's easier than doing it with your bare hands. And it's embarrassing that she gave that advice to that guy and on camera on purpose and let it be published. That's embarrassing, and the whole thing is incredibly embarrassing and discrediting for Ariel Weiss. Is that ad hominem? Well, ad hominem is when you don't like somebody's argument. And so, in order to try to get rid of the argument, you try to get rid of the person. You say something like, don't listen to this person, they're evil. Don't listen to this person, they are crazy. This person embarrassed themselves, they are discredited. You don't need to consider these arguments. That's ad hominem. It's attacking someone instead of going after their arguments. But what if my argument is, this worked for me, and so it will work for you. Let me show you. Let me demonstrate. And I demonstrate something. And it's a mess. It doesn't work. But let's say then I follow that up by not acknowledging that it didn't work and simply pretending like it did work. And then when it doesn't work for you, simply pretending like it did work and convincing you to pretend that it did work. In that kind of situation, the argument you made, the claim you made, is based on yourself, which puts anyone who wants to subject your claim to criticism or subject your claim to a good, respectful, but vigorous examination. Anyone doing that now and coming to the conclusion that you're not credible, that your claims are not credible, that you did not show what you claim to show, anyone saying that is now attacking you. Not because they would not like to address your arguments, but because that is addressing your arguments. It's the only way to address your arguments. You've essentially thrown yourself in front of the arguments that are coming your way, and now you're claiming anyone who's making them is a bully. But who's the bully in that situation? Is the bully some guy with a small channel and a big mouth who is willing to say what's on his mind because it's hard to sleep if he doesn't? Is he the bully? Or is the bully the person or the people who try to have that person excluded from the discussion, even if the way they do so is to complain that he has attacked someone personally? So now we've taken what could be a good debate, and we have reduced it to the level of children on the playground saying, I know you are, but what am I? That's not who I want to be. But that is the only option if I want to say anything about this now. This is sneaky, true ad hominem. This is trying to get rid of someone because what they're saying is inconvenient. And it's inconvenient because it's true. And it's obviously true. I understand. This is somebody's livelihood. And this is where I was wrong. I underestimated just how much talking about this could hurt me personally. I underestimated the lengths people will go to protect a lie. I really overestimated the access people have to the good parts of their own heart. I overestimated how willing people are to look for the truth just because they claim to be looking for the truth. I overestimated the humanity of people like Ariel Weiss and all the other defenders of the Alexander technique who have a stake in the game. Whether it's money, whether it's some kind of social benefit, whether it's just the money they spent already that they don't want to admit that they got scammed.
I haven't always been a teacher of the Alexander technique. I went along for my first Alexander lesson, not knowing much about it. I knew it concerned your posture. I didn't know anything much else other than that, and I think I just hoped that it might lessen my pain somewhat. That's all I was hoping for. 3 months after my first Alexander technique lesson, I found myself on a teacher training course because I wanted to learn how to teach this amazing work to others.
It's a shitty situation. A really shitty situation. What I'm asking you to do is not accept this. Listen, I'm excluded from a lot of the places where people go to discuss things like this, because the ideas that I'm talking about and the criticisms I have are unacceptable to people who are defending an indefensible position. They will go to great lengths to suppress this argument. And what I want you to do is keep bringing it up. I'm going to put a link in the video description under the link to the video that I want you to watch before you watch this one. And you can find there a t-shirt for sale. I designed the t-shirt. It's not a very fancy design. And if you don't want to contribute to my channel because you don't like me personally or whatever, look at the design I made and make your own version of this. Or just buy the t-shirt. I don't get a lot of money for the sale of these t-shirts. It just says, show me. And the reason I made that t-shirt is because I'm trying to start a movement. I think that if we make it normal to expect someone selling you a technique to be able to show you personally how it works, or at least to bring someone into the room who can show you exactly what the results should be and exactly what it is you are going for. A model to follow, a role model, shall we say. Until we make that the norm, we are condemned to this cycle of bullshit. This endless cycle of bullshit, of Alexander technique, Feldenkrais, of all of these methods that don't work. They are the skills equivalent of, I don't know, I can't even think of something. The training equivalent of going to a psychic. It's magic, and the problem is magic isn't real. It's not real in the sense, at least, that it will help you get good at singing or get good at anything. But simply being right next to someone who's doing what you would like to do, that's powerful. When you find yourself in a situation with some conductor or some voice teacher or some whoever, self-appointed expert on singing or whatever, is trying to tell you to listen to them without being able to show you any good reason to listen to them, you can show them your t-shirt and you can explain to them that this isn't personal, that you get a lot of advice in your life because of the situation you're in, being a singer. People feel free. They just feel so free. I think they imagine singers don't really use skills in the sense that a violin player uses skills. I think they imagine that we're livestock or something, and that the words and the techniques and stuff that we use, really, they don't matter, and anyone can just make them up. And they're able to do this and continue to do this because we, as a group, as a cohort, we consumers of voice lessons and vocal pedagogy, we don't insist on the obvious and the obvious truth, which is that if somebody can't show you, they don't know. You could just tell them. But if you're anything like I was when I was a young singer, you don't have that courage, and you're in no position to lead the charge. But you are in a good position to say, me too. This guy, Mr. Opera he told me, actually, I'm within my rights to say, show me. And not only am I within my rights, it's my obligation to say, show me. When I walk in your door and I paid you money, or when I sign my name on a contract saying, I'm going to sing this role on the stage, I have a responsibility now to filter the advice I get. And I need a reasonable filter for that advice because I cannot listen to everybody. And I cannot consider every single piece of advice equally. This simple test is your filter. Show me. If you cannot show me personally, bring me someone in the room right now who can show me, or do it tomorrow. But without that, we do not have a deal. I am not your student until you show me there's something to study.